WWE just pulled off the most shocking return in wrestling history, and Triple H is about to have the biggest headache of his career. AJ Lee, yes, the AJ Lee who walked away from WWE over a decade ago, just rolled up to Monday Night Raw in a hospital ambulance with CM Punk, and they literally wheeled out Roman Reigns like they were conducting some kind of wrestling resurrection. But here's what's going to make your blood boil: this wasn't some feel-good comeback story. This was a calculated power play that just turned the entire WWE landscape upside down, and the way they did it completely disrespected everything WWE has built over the past 10 years. Dramatic pause: if you think you know what happened on Raw last night, you're dead wrong. The footage they showed on television was nothing compared to what really went down behind the scenes, and what I'm about to tell you will make you question whether WWE has completely lost control of their own company. Smash that like button, because this story goes so deep it involves legal battles, contract violations, and a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of WWE management. The setup that nobody expected. Let me break down exactly how we got to the most insane moment in modern WWE history, because what you saw on your TV screen was just the tip of an iceberg that's been forming for months. While everyone was focused on Roman Reigns recovering from his brutal beatdown, while the wrestling world was speculating about when the tribal chief would return, nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this coming. AJ Lee hasn't been seen on WWE programming since 2014. She walked away from the company at the peak of her career, citing frustrations with how women were being treated, creative differences, and what she called fundamental disagreements about the direction of professional wrestling. For over a decade, she's been persona non grata in WWE circles, someone whose name couldn't even be mentioned on television without legal teams getting involved. CM Punk's situation was equally complicated. After his explosive podcast interviews, his legal battles with WWE, and years of bitter public feuding with the company, his recent return was supposed to be carefully managed, controlled, and scripted down to the last detail. WWE spent months negotiating his comeback, establishing boundaries, and making sure that his presence wouldn't disrupt their carefully constructed corporate image. But what happened on Raw completely shattered those boundaries and turned both AJ Lee and CM Punk into wildcards that WWE management cannot control. Here's what sources close to the situation are telling us: this wasn't sanctioned by WWE. This wasn't approved by Triple H. This wasn't part of any official storyline or creative direction. AJ Lee and CM Punk went completely rogue, and they used Roman Reigns' hospitalization as their vehicle to stage what amounts to a hostile takeover of WWE programming. The hospital conspiracy: the story starts 3 days before Raw, when Roman Reigns was supposed to be quietly recovering from his injuries in a private medical facility. The official WWE statement was that he was receiving treatment for injuries sustained during his recent attacks, that his condition was stable, and that he would return when medically cleared by WWE's doctors. That official statement was a complete lie. Sources inside the medical facility tell us that Roman Reigns was actually ready to be discharged 2 days earlier than WWE wanted. His injuries, while serious, had healed faster than expected, and medical professionals saw no reason to keep him hospitalized. But WWE management, particularly Triple H and Nick Khan, wanted to extend his absence for storyline purposes. They wanted to milk the sympathy factor. They wanted to build anticipation for his return. They wanted to control every aspect of how Roman Reigns came back to television, ensuring maximum ratings impact and merchandise sales opportunities. What they didn't count on was AJ Lee and CM Punk deciding to take matters into their own hands. According to multiple sources, AJ Lee had been in contact with Roman Reigns throughout his hospitalization. Not through official WWE channels, not through management-approved communications, but through personal relationships that date back years before either of them became major WWE stars. She knew he was being kept in the hospital longer than necessary, and she knew exactly why WWE was manipulating the situation. CM Punk's involvement came through his relationship with AJ Lee, but also through his own frustrations with how WWE was handling Roman's situation. Despite their own complicated history, Punk respected Roman as a performer and was disgusted by what he saw as WWE exploiting an injured wrestler for storyline purposes. The plan that shocked everyone: what AJ Lee and CM Punk planned wasn't just a surprise return, it was a deliberate assault on WWE's corporate control over their talent and storylines. They knew that showing up unannounced would create chaos, but that chaos was exactly what they wanted. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity and devastating in its execution. AJ Lee would use her connections in the medical community to arrange Roman's actual discharge from the hospital. CM Punk would handle the logistics of getting them to the arena and onto WWE television. Together, they would create a moment so shocking, so unexpected, and so emotionally powerful that WWE would have no choice but to let it happen on live television. But here's the part that makes this even more incredible: they didn't tell Roman Reigns what they were planning until the day it happened. Sources close to the situation tell us that Roman was as shocked as everyone else when AJ Lee showed up at his hospital room with discharge papers and a plan to hijack Monday Night Raw. He had been expecting to follow WWE's timeline, to return when management decided he was ready, to play his part in whatever storyline they had constructed around his absence. Instead, AJ Lee presented him with a choice: continue being a corporate puppet whose career is controlled by executives who care more about quarterly earnings than wrestler welfare, or take control of his own narrative and remind the wrestling world why he's called the head of the table. Roman Reigns chose Revolution. The ambulance arrival. The visual of AJ Lee and CM Punk arriving at Raw in a hospital ambulance will go down as one of the most iconic moments in wrestling history, but the story behind that ambulance is even more incredible than what we saw on television. First of all, that wasn't a prop ambulance provided by WWE's production team. That was a real medical vehicle that AJ Lee arranged through her connections in the healthcare industry. The paramedics who were with them weren't actors playing roles, they were actual medical professionals who had been caring for Roman Reigns and who were disgusted by WWE's decision to keep him hospitalized for storyline purposes. When that ambulance pulled up to the arena, WWE security had no idea what was happening. They saw medical personnel and assumed it was some kind of emergency situation. They cleared the way, opened doors, and basically provided an escort for what turned out to be the most elaborate work in modern wrestling history. But here's what makes this even better: AJ Lee and CM Punk timed their arrival perfectly to coincide with a commercial break, which meant WWE's production team had no opportunity to cut away or prevent what was about to happen from being broadcast to millions of viewers. The look on Triple H's face when he realized what was happening has already become a meme, but people don't understand the full context of his reaction. This wasn't just surprise, this was the dawning realization that two wrestlers had just executed a plan that completely bypassed every level of WWE's corporate structure and put them in a position where they had to choose between looking weak on live television or allowing unauthorized talent to take control of their show. The wheelchair moment. The image of Roman Reigns being wheeled out of that ambulance in a hospital wheelchair, with AJ Lee and CM Punk flanking him like bodyguards, created one of the most powerful visual moments in recent wrestling memory. But what made that moment even more impactful was the genuine emotion on Roman's face. This wasn't scripted Roman Reigns playing a character. This was Joe Anoa'i, the person, realizing that two wrestlers who barely knew him had put their own careers at risk to rescue him from a situation that was damaging his health and his professional dignity. The tears in his eyes weren't part of any storyline, they were real gratitude for friends who had proven that wrestling could still be about more than corporate profits. AJ Lee's positioning was particularly significant. She didn't just push the wheelchair, she walked beside it like a guardian, making it clear that anyone who wanted to mess with Roman Reigns would have to go through her first. For a woman who had walked away from WWE over how women were treated, her presence in that moment sent a message that transcended gender politics and entered the realm of pure professional respect. CM Punk's role was equally powerful. Instead of grandstanding or making the moment about his own return to WWE, he stayed in the background, focused entirely on ensuring Roman's safe arrival. His body language communicated something that wrestling fans hadn't seen in years: genuine care for a fellow performer that went beyond storylines, beyond corporate politics, beyond personal advancement. The crowd reaction that broke the arena. The response from the WWE Universe when they realized what was happening created one of the loudest, most sustained reactions in Raw history. But this wasn't just cheering for a surprise return, this was an entire arena full of people realizing they were witnessing something authentic in an industry built on predetermined outcomes. The initial confusion was palpable. Fans saw the ambulance and assumed something terrible had happened. Then they saw AJ Lee, and the confusion turned to shock. Then they saw CM Punk, and the shock turned to disbelief. And finally, when Roman Reigns emerged from that ambulance, the entire arena exploded with a mixture of relief, excitement, and appreciation for what they were witnessing. But here's what made the crowd reaction even more special: it wasn't just about the star power or the surprise factor. Fans instinctively understood that they were seeing something real, something that hadn't been focus grouped or corporate approved or designed to maximize social media engagement. They were seeing three wrestlers who had decided to prioritize authenticity over corporate compliance, and that authenticity resonated in ways that scripted moments never could. The chants that emerged from the crowd tell the whole story. Instead of standard "holy shit" or "this is awesome" chants, fans started chanting "thank you, AJ" and "welcome home, Punk and Roman's back." These weren't chants celebrating entertainment, these were chants celebrating what felt like genuine human connection and professional loyalty. Backstage chaos. While fans were witnessing this incredible moment, absolute chaos was erupting behind the scenes as WWE management tried to figure out how to handle a situation that was completely outside their control. Sources tell us that Triple H was in emergency meetings with legal, with Nick Khan, and with Stephanie McMahon trying to determine what their options were. Could they cut the broadcast? Could they have security remove AJ Lee and CM Punk? Could they find some way to regain control of their own show? The problem was that every option they considered would have made them look weak or incompetent on live television. Cutting the broadcast would have confirmed that WWE couldn't control their own talent. Having security intervene would have created terrible optics around removing people who were helping an injured wrestler. And letting the situation play out meant accepting that their corporate authority had been completely undermined. WWE's production team was getting conflicting instructions through their headsets. Some executives wanted them to cut away from the ambulance. Others wanted them to follow the story and see where it went. Still others wanted them to go to an unscheduled commercial break to give management time to figure out their response. The result was some of the most awkward television production in WWE history, with cameras seeming unsure of what they should be focusing on, commentary teams clearly getting real-time instructions about what they could and couldn't say, and an overall sense that nobody in charge knew what was supposed to happen next. AJ Lee's power play. What most people don't understand about AJ Lee's involvement in this situation is that it wasn't just about helping Roman Reigns, it was about making a statement that could change how WWE treats all of their talent. Her decision to get involved was calculated, strategic, and designed to expose problems within WWE's corporate structure that go far beyond one wrestler's hospitalization. AJ Lee's departure from WWE in 2014 was about more than just women's wrestling or creative differences. She left because she saw a company that was prioritizing corporate profits over wrestler welfare, that was treating performers like disposable assets rather than human beings, and that was losing touch with what made professional wrestling special in the first place. Her return wasn't about wanting to get back in the ring or revive her career. It was about proving that wrestlers could still take control of their own narratives when management failed them. By arranging Roman's discharge and orchestrating his return, she demonstrated that talent doesn't have to accept corporate manipulation, even when that manipulation comes from the biggest wrestling company in the world. The choice to work with CM Punk was particularly significant. Despite their personal history, despite the complications of their relationship, despite the potential professional consequences, she put all of that aside to focus on what was right for a fellow wrestler. That decision showed a level of professional maturity and moral clarity that WWE's corporate executives could learn from. But AJ Lee's power play went deeper than just this one incident. Sources tell us that she's been quietly building relationships with other WWE wrestlers who are frustrated with management decisions, who feel like their careers are being mishandled, or who want more control over their own professional destinies. Her involvement in Roman's situation might just be the beginning of a larger movement within WWE. CM Punk's redemption. For CM Punk, this incident represents something even more significant than a surprise return or a shocking moment. It represents the completion of his journey from bitter ex-employee to someone who genuinely cares about the wrestling business and the people in it. The CM Punk who left WWE in 2014 was angry, frustrated, and focused primarily on his own grievances with the company. His podcast interviews and public statements were about settling scores, exposing problems, and making sure people understood why he felt betrayed by WWE management. That anger was justified, but it was also limiting because it made everything about his personal experience rather than larger issues within the industry. The CM Punk who returned to help Roman Reigns showed a completely different perspective. This wasn't about his own career or his own grievances. This was about recognizing that another wrestler was being mistreated and deciding to do something about it, even though helping Roman provided no direct benefit to Punk's own situation. Working with AJ Lee added another layer of complexity to Punk's redemption story. Their personal relationship had been scrutinized by wrestling media for years, and their decision to work together professionally despite personal complications showed a level of maturity that neither of them had displayed earlier in their careers. But perhaps most significantly, Punk's role in this situation demonstrated that he had learned to channel his rebellious instincts in productive rather than destructive ways. Instead of just criticizing WWE management, he took concrete action to help a fellow wrestler. Instead of just talking about problems, he became part of the solution. The medical controversy. One of the most disturbing aspects of this entire situation is what it reveals about WWE's approach to wrestler health and medical care. The fact that Roman Reigns was being kept in a hospital longer than medically necessary for storyline purposes raises serious questions about the company's priorities and their commitment to talent welfare. Medical professionals who were involved in Roman's care have spoken anonymously about their concerns regarding WWE's influence over treatment decisions. They describe a situation where corporate representatives were more interested in controlling the narrative around Roman's injuries than they were in ensuring he received appropriate care and was discharged as soon as medically appropriate. The decision to extend Roman's hospitalization wasn't based on medical necessity, it was based on television programming needs. WWE wanted to maximize the drama around his absence, build anticipation for his return, and create storyline opportunities that would generate ratings and social media engagement. The fact that this came at the expense of keeping an injured wrestler in a medical facility longer than necessary is deeply troubling. AJ Lee's ability to arrange Roman's discharge through proper medical channels exposes the fact that WWE's timeline was never about his health, it was about their convenience. When actual medical professionals reviewed his condition and determined he was ready to leave, they had no hesitation about approving his discharge, regardless of what WWE management wanted. This medical controversy extends beyond just Roman Reigns. If WWE is willing to manipulate one wrestler's medical care for storyline purposes, what does that say about how they approach healthcare decisions for all of their talent? Are other wrestlers being kept out of action longer than necessary? Are medical decisions being made based on programming needs rather than health considerations? The legal implications from a legal perspective, what AJ Lee and CM Punk did creates a complicated situation that WWE's lawyers are still trying to navigate. On one hand, they helped a wrestler receive appropriate medical care and return to work when he was medically cleared to do so. On the other hand, they completely bypassed WWE's corporate structure and took actions that weren't authorized by management. AJ Lee's involvement is particularly complex because she doesn't have a current contract with WWE. Technically, she had no legal obligation to follow company policies or respect management decisions. Her actions might have been unauthorized, but they weren't necessarily violations of any agreement she had with the company. CM Punk's situation is more complicated because he does have a current WWE contract, and his unauthorized actions could potentially be viewed as contract violations. However, WWE would have a difficult time disciplining him for helping an injured wrestler receive appropriate medical care, especially when that care was provided through proper medical channels. The use of a real ambulance and real medical personnel adds another layer of legal complexity. WWE could argue that AJ Lee and CM Punk misrepresented the situation to medical professionals, but those same professionals could argue that they were providing appropriate care to someone who was being kept in a medical facility for non-medical reasons. WWE's legal team is reportedly trying to determine whether they have any grounds for action against either AJ Lee or CM Punk, but they're also concerned about the public relations nightmare that would come from punishing wrestlers for helping an injured colleague. The optics of disciplining people for prioritizing wrestler health over corporate convenience would be devastating for WWE's public image. The corporate response. WWE management's response to this situation has been a masterclass in corporate damage control, but it's also revealed the fundamental tensions between WWE as an entertainment company and wrestling as a legitimate sport with real athletes who deserve appropriate treatment. Initially, WWE tried to frame the incident as part of their planned programming, suggesting that AJ Lee and CM Punk's involvement had been coordinated with management all along. This narrative fell apart quickly when multiple sources confirmed that neither WWE executives nor production staff had any advanced knowledge of what was going to happen. The second approach was to focus on the positive aspects of the story: Roman's return, the surprise appearances, and the emotional impact on fans. This strategy worked better from a public relations standpoint, but it still didn't address the underlying issues about medical care and corporate control that the incident had exposed. Currently, WWE seems to be trying to incorporate this incident into their ongoing storylines while also conducting internal reviews of their talent relations and medical protocols. They're walking a tightrope between acknowledging that problems exist and admitting that their policies might need significant changes. The corporate response has also included private conversations with other WWE talent about the importance of following proper channels and respecting management decisions. These conversations are reportedly being met with mixed reactions, as some wrestlers are inspired by what AJ Lee and CM Punk accomplished while others are concerned about potential consequences for similar actions. The fan reaction explosion. The response from WWE fans and the broader wrestling community has been overwhelmingly positive, but it's also revealed deep frustrations with how WWE has been handling talent relations and storytelling in recent years. Social media engagement around this incident has reached levels that WWE hasn't seen since major WrestleMania moments. Fan reaction has focused on several key themes. First, there's genuine appreciation for what appears to be authentic emotion and real relationships between wrestlers. In an era where so much of WWE programming feels scripted and corporate approved, seeing wrestlers genuinely care for each other resonates powerfully with audiences who remember when wrestling felt more authentic. Second, there's excitement about the unpredictability that AJ Lee and CM Punk brought to WWE programming. Fans have been complaining for years that modern WWE is too predictable, that every storyline follows the same patterns, and that there are never any real surprises. This incident proved that wrestling can still be genuinely shocking when wrestlers are willing to go off script. Third, there's respect for wrestlers who are willing to put their own careers at risk to help colleagues. AJ Lee and CM Punk both had everything to lose and nothing tangible to gain from getting involved in Roman's situation, but they did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. That kind of professional loyalty is rare in any industry, and wrestling fans appreciate seeing it displayed so publicly. The fan reaction has also included significant criticism of WWE management for keeping Roman hospitalized longer than necessary. Fans understand that wrestling involves predetermined outcomes, but they draw the line at manipulating real medical situations for entertainment purposes. The fact that AJ Lee and CM Punk had to intervene to get Roman appropriate care reflects poorly on WWE's commitment to talent welfare. The industry impact. This incident has sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling industry, with other promotions and wrestlers taking note of what happened and what it might mean for how talent management relationships evolve in the future. Independent wrestling promotions have been quick to use this incident as an example of why wrestlers should maintain control over their own careers and health decisions. The contrast between WWE's corporate approach and the personal loyalty displayed by AJ Lee and CM Punk has become a recruiting tool for companies trying to attract talent who are frustrated with major promotion politics. Other major wrestling companies are reportedly reviewing their own medical protocols and talent relations policies to ensure they don't face similar situations. The bad publicity WWE has received over keeping Roman hospitalized longer than necessary has made other companies more conscious of how their medical decisions might be perceived. Veterans in the wrestling industry have been particularly vocal about their support for what AJ Lee and CM Punk did. Wrestlers who lived through earlier eras when talent had less protection and fewer rights see this incident as an example of modern wrestlers standing up for each other in ways that weren't always possible in the past. The incident has also sparked broader discussions about wrestler unionization and collective bargaining. If wrestlers need to rely on individual acts of loyalty and rebellion to ensure appropriate treatment, perhaps it's time for more systematic approaches to protecting talent rights and welfare. The Bloodline implications from a storyline perspective. AJ Lee and CM Punk's rescue of Roman Reigns has completely changed the dynamics of the Bloodline saga and created new possibilities for how that story develops going forward. Roman's return under these circumstances positions him differently than any previous comeback in his career. Instead of returning as the corporate chosen face of the company, he's returning as someone who was rescued by wrestlers operating outside WWE's corporate structure. This gives him a level of authenticity and independence that he's never had before. The involvement of AJ Lee and CM Punk also creates potential storyline complications for Roman's relationships within the Bloodline. How does Solo Sikoa react to Roman being saved by people who have no connection to their family structure? How does Jacob Fatu feel about Roman accepting help from outsiders? These questions create new tensions and possibilities within the Bloodline narrative. There's also the question of whether AJ Lee and CM Punk's actions create obligations or debts that will influence future storylines. Roman now owes his return to two wrestlers who had no obligation to help him, and that dynamic could play out in interesting ways as the Bloodline story continues to develop. The contrast between Roman's corporate-sanctioned family relationships and the genuine friendship displayed by AJ Lee and CM Punk could become a central theme in future storylines, exploring questions about chosen family versus blood family and corporate loyalty versus personal loyalty. The women's wrestling revolution. AJ Lee's prominent role in this incident has reignited discussions about women's wrestling and the progress WWE has made since her departure in 2014. Her ability to orchestrate Roman's rescue and challenge WWE management demonstrates the kind of agency and power that women's wrestlers have been fighting for throughout their careers. The contrast between AJ Lee's current position and her circumstances when she left WWE in 2014 is striking. 10 years ago, she was frustrated by limited opportunities and corporate decisions that undervalued women's contributions to professional wrestling. Her return as someone powerful enough to challenge WWE management and rescue one of their biggest stars shows how much her status and influence have grown. Her partnership with CM Punk in this situation also demonstrates that gender doesn't have to be a limiting factor in professional wrestling relationships. They worked together as equals, with AJ Lee taking the lead on medical arrangements while CM Punk handled logistics and support. This kind of collaborative partnership could serve as a model for future intergender storylines and professional relationships. The positive fan reaction to AJ Lee's involvement shows that audiences are ready for women's wrestlers to play central roles in major storylines, not just as romantic interests or side characters, but as protagonists driving major narrative developments. Her actions prove that women can be just as effective as men at challenging corporate authority and protecting fellow wrestlers. The Punk redemption completes CM Punk's journey from bitter ex-WWE employee to someone willing to risk his career to help a fellow wrestler represents one of the most compelling redemption stories in modern wrestling. His evolution from someone focused primarily on personal grievances to someone taking action for the benefit of others shows real personal growth and professional maturity. The decision to work with AJ Lee despite their complicated personal history demonstrates Punk's ability to prioritize professional objectives over personal complications. This kind of maturity wasn't always evident in his earlier WWE run, when personal conflicts often became public controversies that distracted from his in-ring work. Punk's supportive rather than dominant role in Roman's rescue also shows that he's learned to be effective without always being the center of attention. The CM Punk who left WWE in 2014 might have tried to make this situation about his own return and his own grievances with management. The CM Punk who returned focused entirely on helping Roman and let the story be about what Roman needed rather than what Punk wanted. This incident positions CM Punk for a completely different kind of WWE run than anyone expected. Instead of returning as the rebellious anti-hero challenging authority for personal reasons, he's established himself as someone who challenges authority when it's necessary to protect fellow wrestlers. That's a much more mature and sustainable character foundation. The future implications. Looking ahead, this incident creates possibilities and complications that will influence WWE programming for months or years to come. The precedent that AJ Lee and CM Punk established, that wrestlers can and should take action when management fails to protect talent, could inspire similar actions from other wrestlers facing difficult situations. WWE management now has to consider the possibility that other talent might follow this example, taking unauthorized actions when they believe it's necessary for wrestler welfare or professional integrity. This could force changes in how WWE approaches talent relations, medical decisions, and storyline development. The successful execution of this plan also proves that wrestlers don't have to accept corporate limitations on their careers or their personal agency. AJ Lee and CM Punk showed that it's possible to challenge WWE's authority effectively without destroying their relationship with the company entirely. The emotional authenticity that this incident brought to WWE programming could also influence how future storylines are developed. Fans responded so positively to what felt like genuine emotion and real relationships that WWE might be forced to incorporate more authentic elements into their usually heavily scripted programming. The ultimate questions as the wrestling world continues to process this incredible incident, we're left with fundamental questions about the nature of professional wrestling, the relationship between corporate entertainment and athletic competition, and the responsibilities that wrestlers have to each other. Was AJ Lee right to bypass WWE management and arrange Roman's discharge herself? Should wrestlers accept corporate decisions about their medical care, or do they have the right to seek appropriate treatment when they believe management is prioritizing business over health? These questions don't have easy answers, but they're conversations that the wrestling industry needs to have. Did CM Punk risk his WWE comeback by participating in an unauthorized plan to rescue Roman Reigns? Was the potential benefit to Roman worth the risk to his own career? And what does his willingness to take that risk say about his evolution as both a person and a professional wrestler? How should WWE respond to talented wrestlers who are willing to challenge corporate authority when they believe it's necessary? Should they punish AJ Lee and CM Punk for going outside proper channels, or should they examine why talented people felt it was necessary to take such dramatic action? And ultimately, what does this incident say about the current state of WWE and professional wrestling in general? Are wrestlers empowered to make decisions about their own careers and welfare, or are they subject to corporate decisions that may not always prioritize their best interests? The lasting impact, regardless of how these questions are answered, one thing is certain: AJ Lee and CM Punk's rescue of Roman Reigns will be remembered as a watershed moment in modern wrestling history. They proved that wrestlers can still surprise audiences, challenge authority, and prioritize each other's welfare over corporate convenience. They created a moment of genuine emotion and authentic relationships in an industry that often struggles with both. They reminded fans why they fell in love with professional wrestling in the first place, not because of corporate storylines or predetermined outcomes, but because of real people doing extraordinary things for each other. Most importantly, they established a precedent that other wrestlers can follow when they find themselves in situations where corporate interests conflict with personal welfare or professional integrity. The next time WWE management makes a decision that prioritizes business over talent welfare, they'll have to consider the possibility that other wrestlers might follow the example that AJ Lee and CM Punk established. The wrestling world is still processing what happened on that Monday Night Raw, still trying to understand what it means, and still wondering what comes next. But one thing is absolutely clear: AJ Lee and CM Punk didn't just bring Roman Reigns back from the hospital, they brought back something that wrestling had been missing for too long. They brought back the possibility that anything can happen, that wrestlers care about each other more than corporate politics, and that sometimes doing the right thing is more important than following proper channels. That's a lesson that extends far beyond professional wrestling, and it's why this incident will be remembered long after the specific details of the storylines are forgotten. The ambulance has left, Roman Reigns is back, and wrestling will never be quite the same. And honestly, that's exactly what this industry needed. End of script. If this breakdown of the most shocking return in WWE history opened your eyes to what really happened, smash the like button and let me know in the comments whether you think AJ Lee and CM Punk were justified in what they did. Subscribe for more exclusive wrestling content, because this story is far from over, and we'll be here to cover every twist and turn as WWE tries to figure out what to do next.